Natasha and thank you so much for joining me today. Well, today we are going to do one of my favorite techniques, which is offset stamping. Now, we are going to be doing this on some Kraft colored cardstock today. There is a few different ways to do this, but this is my favorite. You are going to need a white ink. I use the Hero Arts Unicorn ink. I'm going to use an alphabet stamp today, but I'm also going to do it using a leafy stamp as well, just in case that's something that you have in your stash. This is the Leaf Canopy from Altenew, an absolute cracker of a stamp set. This is an oldie but a goodie. So depending on what you have, we're going to make two different styles today. Now, first of all, this technique is super easy. I will say that it is easier to do it with a stamping platform, but not necessary at all. You absolutely can just stamp this with clear stamps, is definitely easier. So either acrylic or photopolymer, they are definitely the most easy. Now, in my stamping platform, I have the Altenew sticky grid, I think it's called, or the stamping wheel grid or something like that. And I just cut them down, and this one I have used for months and months at this point, maybe, I don't know, 4 or 5 months, not losing its stick, still doing a great job. So I used to use the Sizzix sticky grids in here, and it did work, it worked really, really well, but I didn't find that they lasted as long, and if something like ink or embossing powder got on them, of course they would lose their stick. Whereas I have found this one to have to be lasting really well. It's got good longevity, that's really important when I am investing in a product. Now I'm going to do a birthday card, so I have all of the letters from that stamp set in the word birthday. I'm using some Kraft cardstock from Fawn, which is my favorite Kraft colored cardstock, which is so funny because actually Kraft comes in so many different shades, and I really like this one. This is my favorite, if that makes any sense. And I'm going to stamp these out in some white ink. Now this is the Hero Arts Unicorn white ink. It is a pigment ink, so it is going to stay wet for quite some time. Now, of course, there are always lots of variations when you're doing a technique. If you want to, at one point, you could stop and heat emboss this with some clear embossing powder or white embossing powder, and then go back and you would do embossing powder for the second layer too. I am just doing ink to keep this super simple. Now, while that is going, I'm going to put that aside to dry because it is pigment ink. It stays wet for longer. I could heat seal it, but I knew I wanted to do 2 cards for you today. So I'm going to use the Leaf Canopy. This is my other stamping platform, and this has the Sizzix sticky grid in it that I was talking about. I'm not going to replace this one until I need to. No point throwing out a product when it's still perfectly good use, but when I eventually have to end up replacing it, I will replace it with the sticky grid from Altenew. They're not too expensive. I think maybe like $6 or $7 US. And so because of its longevity, it works out to be a good price and a good investment for me. I really, really do enjoy them. Now I have stamped this one out. I did stamp this on a sort of rough cut piece of Kraft cardstock. I haven't actually cut down all the sides and made it nice and neat, so I can do that later on. That's no problem. Now, with the second layer here, I'm going to take a minute and do this up close with you. I was speeding ahead at this point and starting to stamp, and then I was like, hold on, I haven't even shifted it. So I did ink this up and then think, whoops. So what you need to do, at the moment, you can see that it is lined up perfectly on that right-hand side with the line and at the top. What you want to do, I'm going to have trouble doing this one-handed, so I'm actually going to put it down, readjust it, and then show you up close again. But you just want to shift it like 1 or 2 millimeters down and to the left, or up and to the right. You can see just a fraction down the edge there that I have shifted it, about 2 millimeters, and then maybe the same up the top. So just a tiny bit. Now I'm deciding to do all my letters different colors, and so that's just what I'm choosing to do, but of course you can do it absolutely all one color. So I'm just going to use my Distress Oxide inks. Oxides are going to layer up really nicely on top of the pigment ink. Dye inks, you're going to get a different look again. You're going to get a different look with pure pigment inks, but just try it out, see what you get. And especially on Kraft cardstock, this bright oxide mix is going to help the ink sit on top of the paper rather than a dye which would sink in and not be quite as bright. So that's why I went for my oxides. And it creates this shadow. Now you'll be able to see this up close soon, but it creates like a drop shadow to the, in my case, bottom left, because that's where I shifted it. And it's just a really cool technique. As I said, you'll be able to see it with the leaf in a minute as well. Now, I had an uneven number of letters here. Of course, I had 8 and I wanted 9 because of the pattern I was doing. So I picked a random little flower that I'm going to do from a very old but much loved stamp set. And again, I just stamp it in the white and then shift it a little bit down and to the left, and then I will stamp this one in a pink. And you can see that this one has quite a big shadow. Not impossible at all to do with just an acrylic block. Now, I'm going to take this stamp from, this die from the Labels Thinlits set here. And this one just so happened to work for me. But see what you've got in your stash. This one has a whole lot of different labels. Now, they call them labels, but for me, they're kind of like, things that I could put sentiments on. Things, shapes, different shapes. Some of them are postage stamps. Some of them are zigzags. Some of them are just, beautiful shaped rectangles and all the good things. So this is a very handy set. It's an old one, but I think it's still available. I'm sure it is. And then I'm going to put a little bit of foam tape on each one of these. So that at the moment, they kind of almost look like little postage stamps. And I could have leaned into that and done a little more detail on them to make them look like that. But I was happy as is, just going along as I was. I'm going to use some foam tape, pop these up. Again, this is going to be quite a simple card, but I actually really love it. We'll do a couple of things to jazz it up as per usual, rather than just plonking these on the card. But I have the word birthday, so I'm going to try and make sure I spell it out right. They will fit 3 across the top and 3 down to create a nice little grid being filled in with that flower. You could do a heart, you could do a star, you could do anything of interest to the person that you were giving it to. And then I can just line these up, roughly see where they're going to go, just so I get an idea of the spacing, because I'm not a big one for measuring. And so I'm going to use a little pick tool. It can sometimes help to get some of those release papers off. Sometimes they're easier, sometimes they're not, depending on all sorts of things. And I will just go along, make sure I've got the top left and top right pretty much where I think they're going to go, and then I come along and do the center one, and I'm able to pop it in place in between those two so that that's nice and centered. Even if I've got it off center, I can sort of use that one to make it look like it's where it's meant to be. And then while I put all these down, I just wanted to let you know, if you are inspired by these videos, then I would love to see your versions of these or your version of offset stamping. And so the easiest way to do that is to come over to my Facebook page. It's called Come Crafting with Natasha, and there is a large, beautiful, supportive group of people over there, and I would love to be able to see your makes. So go ahead and post them over there. Now, for the, because it says birthday, obviously, and I was looking for a little happy, but I didn't have what I needed. So I went into my Christmas stamps, and the top one says Happy Christmas, and that happy is going to be perfect. So no one needs to know that this came from a Christmas stamp set. We love versatility in our paper crafting. And so I'm just going to take a little ruler, outline this with a little black fine liner pen, just so it sticks out a little bit from that beautiful background that we have created. This stamp set is an old one, but it's still available. It's from Woodware, and it is called Christmas Sparkle, I believe. And this is like my main go-to Christmas sentiment stamp set, because it's just a good one. Sometimes you just get those good finds and they just work well for your style of card making, and that's it for me. So I've got the word happy here. I did stamp a couple because usually I will muck one up, or if I choose to only do one, it will not work out well for me. So I do 2. I just need 1 for this one, and then just for something else a little bit more, I have the Syberia. These are the pretty bows, I believe it's called, and it has a large and a small bow. I have die cut the small bow out 3 times, and I have cut them out in just plain white cardstock with some Stick It double-sided adhesive sheets on the back, so I don't have to muck around with glue. This is a fine, dainty, gorgeous little bow, and I think it's just going to add that little extra touch on the front of the card. So I layer all 3 of these up. It becomes a nice thick sort of element to pop on the front, and then I have the word happy there. Of course, everything is already popped up on foam tape, so I don't think I need any more dimension. So all I'm going to do is pop some glue on the back of this one and pop it there, and then the little bow is going to go down there in the center, and I think it doesn't cover up too much. It's a perfect size little bow. I have used this in a few videos now, and it's just, I feel like a little bow is one of those very handy things to have. It does mean you can just create a gift box on the front of a card, so just like a square piece of paper or a cube, and then pop the little bow on the top, and it just looks stunning. Pop some faux ribbon, either some paper or actual ribbon, around the square shape on your box, and you have a gorgeous card ready to go with a little bow on top too. Now I do have double-sided adhesive on there, but I popped some glue on just to make sure, because there's not a lot holding it on contact wise, and that is card number 1. Now I want to move on to card number 2. We did get to stamping the white portion of it earlier on, but of course I do want to add a little bit of color to it, so I will bring in my other stamping platform that it's just sitting on there ready to go. I haven't shifted this yet, so it's still perfectly aligned for the white, but it is nice and dry, so I'm going to pick it up out of my spot. And this is one thing that is very helpful when you have the grid markings on the back there. Now both these sticky grids and the Altenew stamping wheel, they all have the grid lines, which again makes it just a whole lot easier for, even if you lose your place, you know, you can kind of put it back in place and make sure you've got it in the right spot. Again, I'm going to use my Distress Oxide inks. I've got 3 of them. I've got the Twisted Citron, Cracked Pistachio and Peacock Feathers. I'm going to use some finger daubers to pop these on just because it's kind of a small space. Now, by all means, you can just use 1 ink or 2 inks and do a nice little gradient. I decided for whatever reason to go completely random. So I really just filled in a couple of leaves and then, you know, moved on to the next color, or I made sure to try and have a couple of that color somewhere on this little leaf. Now this one, I have got so many videos using this gorgeous stamp set. This is just one of those ones that I actually went ahead and purchased the coordinating dies for as well, because it is just one of those stamp sets. It is such good value, and the techniques that you can do with this are perfect. And of course, being leafy, it's just a really versatile image that you can have with all sorts of occasions, but also for genders and all sorts. So just a good one to have in your stash, something like this along these lines, but it is still available. And I'm going to stamp this a couple of times so I can get a nice gradient in between the colors, a nice little ombre, you know, nice easy moving from one color to the next. And that's the ability that the stamping platform gives me. You absolutely could do this just with an acrylic block. I've done it before and it works out fine. You just want to have nice juicy ink pads, because you really only get one chance to kind of stamp the coloured layer on top, but works well, works fine. Then I'm going to take the Gina K, I think this is the Big Birthdays, and I love a gorgeous big sentiment because this one is going to fill that spot easily for me. This card came together so quickly. Actually, both of these were pretty quick cards today, and you can definitely see that shadow layer with the white. I really, really like that look. You can see it really well here with the leaf, and that's what we're going for, this offset stamping. It can also be called shadow stamping. There's always a couple of different names for every technique out there, but in general, it creates a shadow, or you are, you know, stamping just offset stamping, you know, the image that you're working with. Right, I am going to cut this down because remember I just cut this randomly with scissors to begin with. So let's give this some straight edges. I am using my Spellbinders guillotine trimmer, which is my new favorite. I absolutely love this, highly recommend. And I'm just going to slice off each one of those corners. I'm going to make the card 5.5 wide, but I'm going to make it a bit skinnier because I want to have a little bit of colour show through on the edges, because this card at the moment is quite Kraft coloured. So I'm going to take the same 3 colours that I used for the leaf, and I'm going to ombre them, but I'm going to switch the direction. So one will be at the top and one will be at the bottom, switch the direction, and then I just go back and forth to make sure there's like a nice little smooth blend between all of the colours. It's really easy. Green and blue are next to each other on the colour wheel, so that means that they're going to blend into each other really nicely. And there is my card base. My card base is 4¼ by 5.5 inches. I'm going to pop this up on some foam tape, and I've done the colour up far enough that you'll be able to see nicely. You know, you won't be able to peek underneath and see that it's finishing or anything. It just looks continuous. And we've got that gorgeous colour. Now, if you are not sure about putting your card fronts down and you think, I've only got one chance, this foam tape is sticky, I've only got one chance to do it, Here's a little trick. Put the liquid glue on the back of the foam tape. Now do make sure that you kind of spread it around. I do that with the nozzle so that you don't have sticky parts left essentially of the foam. You've covered them all in liquid glue, and this gives me the chance to move this around and make sure that I have this lined up nicely. Now I actually cut my panel too big, I will admit, so we go for a wee trim there and then we are good to go. But here are 2 cards finished with some shadow stamping or offset stamping, and I hope you enjoyed these today. They've got a bit of a different vibe to each one of them, but we've used the same technique. If you're looking for more Natasha content, then head over to natashafootecreative.com. I've got card making classes over there along with a whole lot more videos. But other than that, thank you for being here. I really do appreciate it, and I'll see you in the next video. Thanks, bye.